some folks might suggest that the unusual part is to be in a space where they can speak openly. And that might be actually the only time that they're able to do that. And so hearing that there is an opportunity to share something that one might not have shared before, something about this group is letting this person know that this is actually okay to say that thing that someone might have been holding on to.
Hello and welcome. We're so glad you're tuning into the Taking Good Care show. I'm Dr. Andrew Wong, based in Toronto, Canada.
And I'm Dr. David St. Arnaud, based in Edmonton, Canada. We're two practicing psychologists with over a decade of experience each, working in a variety of settings and supporting diverse populations.
Thanks for joining us. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. While we're both practicing psychologists, our podcast is intended purely for educational and entertainment purposes. It's not a substitute for professional mental health care or treatment. If you're in need of support, we strongly encourage you to reach out to a licensed mental health professional in your area.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning, Dave.
Morning.
Good morning, Nathan.
All right. So for those listeners that are familiar, we try to have guests on as much as we can, actually. So we're very lucky today to have Nathan Foerger. He's a registered psychologist in the province of Alberta. He's experienced providing psychological counseling with school-age children, adolescents, adults, and groups. Nathan has experience working with trauma, ADHD, anxiety, depression, and men's issues. Nathan has been co-facilitating the Anchor Men's Group for 12 years in February. And that's actually, the reason we're bringing Nathan on here today. Nathan, has actually, so the men's group that I've referred to several times in these podcasts, it's the Anchor Men's Support Group through Momentum Walk-in Counseling here in Edmonton. There's in-person and online options. But, Nathan has been with this from the beginning. Like, we started this group 12 years ago, and we have been working together closely, even when we were only doing the group alone, and we would be meeting on Fridays and talking about work and talking about life. And so Nathan, in the last 3 years, has also joined me at my practice. So he's at my office with me, but it's a bit ironic that now that he's at the office, we probably talk less than we did before he joined. So I am super excited to actually just connect with him today and have him on the show and be able to talk about some really meaningful work that we've been doing and hear some of his insights and his perspectives. So welcome, Nathan.
Thank you. Yeah, no, it's a good excuse to connect. Yeah. Put it in the calendar, right? Yeah.
And yet in different offices still, even though you guys work at the same practice. I'm really excited for this chat today because I've heard about the Anchor Men's Group, and Dave will sometimes say it in passing or talk about it in passing. But we've never really had the opportunity to flush it out, even though same thing, Nathan, Dave and I meet almost weekly nowadays. And yet we never really had time to talk about this men's group. So I'm really excited to have you on and to have you and Dave talk more about this group because I think it's so valuable to the community. And I think more communities, honestly, could use a group very similar to this or multiple groups like this.
Yeah, no, I think we've kind of talked about what the magic of the group is. And I think we're still trying to nail that down. But yeah, I'm looking forward to exploring this with you guys.
Yeah, maybe just because, so initially, I was approached to kind of run this group, and then Nathan was a student getting practicum hours at Momentum. It wasn't even called Momentum back then, but that's how we got connected with it. So maybe I'll just give it a bit of an intro on how the group started, and then Nathan, you jump in and add. So the city of Edmonton was funding some groups through their social work program. They had social workers working for the city that were running some groups throughout the city, and they wanted a new group for men in the area that the Momentum or walk-in counseling was located. So we got some funding to do it for a year. And then from there, it kind of evolved. We lost that funding from the city. And so the name of the group actually changed. It used to be called Men Without Hats because that is what the groups were called. And so I had attended a couple of those groups to see what they were doing and tried to model our group after that. But again, it has evolved over the years with the changes of funding and the changes of even leadership within Momentum. So, that's the origin story of it. And I think Nathan, maybe you can speak to kind of what it looks like from the ground. And, even as a student coming into this and joining and participating in this group facilitation thing that you probably didn't have a ton of experience, with groups before that.
Yeah, no, definitely, when I was early on, it wasn't my dream to work with men at all, in fact. So like I was looking for experience. I had done some like teen groups in the past, but not a lot of experience with these men's groups. And so when we first started meeting on Saturdays for the first whatever 6 months, there wasn't a lot of traffic, but as things got busier over time, it would took me a long time to kind of adjust to the way that men's groups work. And but yeah, it is really interesting to look back at the time of just being so new in the profession, and then also learning a lot of skills on the fly, especially with group dynamics and boundary setting and setting
Well,
up.
as you're talking about this, Nathan, like it obviously didn't scare you off. The group didn't scare you off. The clients didn't scare you off. Dave didn't scare you off. So what was it about the group that sort of just started to appeal to you?
To be quite honest, it was the culture that was established early on with Dave and the other facilitator at the time, Dennis. It was this rare opportunity I had to work with male psychologists that I didn't get a lot of other experience in the other work that I was doing. And so that was really refreshing to hear that experience. And then as the culture developed, just having Dave kind of leading the way in vulnerability was a real eye opener, even in the spaces that I was in. Having leadership to be open and honest and curious. That I think that was the original attraction to staying, because I would say the first 3, 4, or 5 years were quite difficult. The working with such a maybe a gruff population
Mhm.
was it's I'm a pretty soft and sensitive fella, so it was a learning curve for sure. But I think now at this stage we're at almost 12 years in, having a bit more of an understanding of how myself, how I work in space, and then also maybe being able to translate a little bit of the behaviors a bit better than what I would have in the past. And now it's something that feels more comfortable.
I think we kind of grew up with the group, right? And so
Mhm.
I wasn't even a psychologist. I was a provisional psychologist. I was being supervised. I was still doing my PhD or finishing off my research. So, we go way back to, yeah, and we didn't really know how to do this thing. And I didn't get into psychology to work with men. That hasn't been like my life purpose from before, but this opportunity presented itself and it was like, okay, well, let's try to do this. And we had ideas of what we were going to do, and then the thing kind of
Yeah.
happened. So even like you saying, just being comfortable with men and a type of man that likely wouldn't sign up for therapy, I think, when we started the group, right? So sometimes they would show up to the walk-in counseling and have like a walk-in session, like they were in a crisis, in distress. They wanted to meet with someone and they could see someone that day at this organization, right? They didn't have to book an appointment. They didn't have to get a referral. They just show up. And from there, they would be told about the men's group, and then they would come to the men's group. That was largely the men that were attending the group at the beginning. And I make it sound like there was a lot of men showing up. There was, I think you'll laugh, Nathan. There was,
Yeah.
one guy for quite some time, and there
Yeah.
was three facilitators. So we're like, come on in,
Yeah.
come hang out in this group of yourself and us.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
so the group
Wow.
got to grow up too with
Mhm.
us. So it was kind of a neat experience.
You know what's interesting though, like even as you talk about like the few who came, or even just the one who came at the beginning, you guys didn't give up because, it's easy to give up when maybe for months there's only a few people showing up and you start to question, is this worth our time and energy and funding? And even the funders could say, like, how's it going? Like, you only have a few people coming out. Like, what are we doing here? What are we doing with this money? But nobody gave up, it sounds like. And I'm just wondering how that persistence and motivation, how did you guys stay motivated to do this?
To be really honest, my time was free at the time. So again, I think part of it was the opportunity that if no one showed up, we would still have a conversation, or we would do some learning together, something that we would go over. But yeah, really at the time it was just like, I hope one person shows up or two people shows up so I could collect some hours. But yeah, once things got going, it went from a group of maybe one to three to seven, and then from
Hmm.
seven it just kind of exploded from there to the I think the record is 45. I think
Wow.
Dave has the record of a group that was like 45. It's split into two and that would have been last year, but it's now ridiculous numbers. So
Wow. Okay. How long did that take though to get those numbers up?
I'm gonna say a year and a half
Okay.
to where things were steady and like a steady number, because we started on Saturday mornings. That's the city identified the
Oh,
sense
okay.
that weekends was they got some feedback that weekends would be a good option for men that work out of town, and that just didn't
Okay.
that didn't that didn't actually show up in the Saturday. So then we moved to Thursday nights, and then things
Yeah.
started to move from there.
I'm so curious because as you're talking about, like there was like one person, three, five, seven. What do you think was, and I'm maybe speaking more so towards society's values, cultural norms. What do you think at the beginning got in the way, and what do you think helped to propel it? Is it just more of the way men may think about, opening up? What is this group? Why do we have to talk about ourselves and feelings? There's stigma, perhaps. What do you think it was?
It's a really interesting question. I think you'll probably have to kind of keep me on track here, because I think I would say that our post-COVID cohort is really different culturally than a pre-COVID cohort. And I think part of it having to do with maybe a decrease in stigma around what it means to go get supports. Yeah, I don't know, Dave. Do you have any?
Yeah. You know what? Like this is a lot of guessing, right? Like we started on Saturdays and we're like, is it the day? Is it the time? Is it, our advertising? Is it the way people are hearing about the group? Like, why are people not showing up to this thing? But I think like you're saying, Andrew, the stigma, I don't think men are like, advocating for more funding for mental health groups. I think about my small town that I grew up in. If someone, starts a men's group, how many people are going to be lining up for this thing? Right. So really intentionally, we tried to reduce any barriers. It was like, if you showed up on that night and you wanted to attend the group, come on in, right? There was no cost. It was funded by the city. So we were trying to reduce any barriers that we could to get guys to come in the door and just see what this thing would be about, right? To see if they would actually benefit from it or appreciate it. But I'm holding all of that, and I also know there's another psychologist in Edmonton that is starting his own men's groups up and is having a lot of the similar challenges that we had initially. So, as much as there might be a shift in stigma and culture and society, I still think like it takes a long time to build these groups up. And actually, I don't know if we want to, how many paths we want to go down, but Nathan and I are working together again in another group that we were approached like a while back and is kind of evolved organically, but it's at a funeral home in
Hmm.
Edmonton for men coping with grief and loss. So we're noticing, the start of that group for the first year, it's like
Wow.
really low numbers and hard to build momentum. But once you get to a certain kind of threshold or tipping point, the word spreads, and you'll have people come in and leave and not attend the group very often, but you'll have a steady flow of new folks checking the group out and a steady flow of like guys that are returning and coming back.
Yeah. No, this is great. I think I know both of you are very humble, so I'm gonna say it. I'm sure it speaks to your reputation that you can now have steady individuals coming and steady numbers coming to your group after, continued years of doing this and having this success. Any new group off the ground, I think is really tough. But I also think it's really innovative that the funeral home is wanting something like this. Like that is actually a really good idea, like of all places.
it is odd to say, oh, I'm going to do a grief group at a funeral home, but these spaces are actually amazing for therapy. It's a
Yeah.
beautiful space to do it. And
Yeah.
all the things that there's all these like low barrier things that I think that men think about. One is parking. Like this is
Yep.
a place with good free parking. They know where to get there.
This will probably come up over and over again, but meeting men or meeting people where they're at. And so if they're coming to a funeral home for a funeral and then they find out about a group and they already are familiar with the location of the place, they already like you're kind of have an advantage, right? And so it might seem odd from the outside, but
Yep.
for a lot of guys, if they're not out there looking for this, they kind of need to bump into it. At least the guys that aren't asking for help, right? And
Yeah.
so, healthy men, healthy it's going to lead to healthy communities, healthy fathers. Like there's ripple effects that I think has, maybe Nathan and I didn't start out wanting to do this work or like really kind of passionate about this work, but by doing it, like we have stuck with it for that reason. So not only the men have returned, like the facilitators that help out with this group generally stick around because it really is meaningful work.
And I was gonna say too, I think Dave, you brought up a good point. Like sometimes you just bump into these things, and sometimes for some people that works because it's like could really remain anonymous, right? Like if you get a referral from a friend, and let's say you're still very private about it, you still feel some stigma towards some of these things, you might not want to bump into anybody when you go to an office. Right? But if you see a flyer and it's like, oh, no one's ever told me about this, probably nobody knows about it, I'm just going to go. It just feels much more anonymous that way. Nathan, you brought up a term earlier, group dynamics. I haven't run groups since my residency, like more than 10 years ago. So it's been a long time. But group dynamics, that's a big piece of the pie in terms of running groups. Like when you said 45 to a group, I can't even imagine the group dynamics there. But can you speak a little bit more to the importance of group dynamics, especially in the groups that you guys are running?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it may be building off of one of the points that Dave had made earlier about having a critical mass of people that carry the culture of what the group is about. Because this isn't a regular closed 16-week group with a psychoeducational aspect. This is an emotional support drop-in group. So when it comes to group dynamics, we don't actually know what we're going to get every week. But now what we do know is that we have, there's going to be maybe 5+ guys that have been with the group 1, 2, 3+ years in the process. And so there's this really amazing thing that happens now where the group dynamics are kind of carried by the individuals that understand the core culture of the group, which is a non-judgmental open space if you feel like sharing. So, and that can every week to week, that can be I don't want to say disrupted because that's not really the heart of it. It's more it
Mhm.
can be interrupted by strong personalities, and that's great. And what we have now is we have facilitators that have enough experience to know that that's okay, and then also veteran group support members that are also can hold space for that too. And I think that's what's really cool is having a strong personality isn't a negative thing in such a huge group. It can be a thing where it can be accepted and we can hold space for it. And then the group can also care for that person in a way that makes sense, either by active listening or feedback. So I'm not sure if I'm truly answering a question about group dynamics because it's so week to week,
Yeah.
but I think I think core members kind of carry that culture.
You bring up such an important point though, Nathan, like the culture that's carried by others, not just the facilitators. Because again, I think we're in a society that we think of like the authority, right? Like who's running the group? Who are these facilitators and are they any good? But beyond the facilitators, that core culture of the people who are coming consistently, they play a huge role in it as well.
Yeah, speaking to what initially drew me to the group was actually Dave's leadership style of openness and humility, and I think that does actually carry into how the rest of the students, myself, have learned how to facilitate groups. You know, David will talk about if I'm speaking less, that means that there's more space for the group to talk. Like this is a successful group if we're not talking too much. And I think at this stage in the group that is true. It means that the group can carry and hold space. Really, our job becomes to just guide the process when it really needs it. I always say
Mm,
I'm not here to police language, but I would like this to be a safe place for all to share. So,
yeah.
it is like this really funny dynamic that I don't think we always get right, but like I think I do think that people do look to the leadership to step in at the necessary times, and that's not that often, so
Yeah, I'll echo that. I think, as facilitators, we hold a certain responsibility. Like we hold 150% of the responsibility. And anytime you have more than one person in the room, the dynamics and the personalities and all of that can be at play. And especially if you don't even have an existing relationship with people, like you don't even know these people at all, and they're showing up. And, then there's people that you know. So I think one of the things that you talk about, like group dynamics and this, like most psychologists, most therapists, they'll take a full course on group therapy, right? And there's ways to facilitate groups and to run groups, and there's different types of groups, and you learn all about that. This group is a bit of an anomaly. Like you still hold that understanding, but it requires a lot of flexibility. A lot. I mean, that's been my own process about the humility or the vulnerability that I'll even bring as a facilitator, because in a way I'm modeling, right? I'm modeling what we want other people to also be doing. So I'm not going to sit up on a big chair and look down on everyone and, psychoanalyze what they're saying and then feed them back, what they need to do. That's not what this group is about. This is so, yeah, Nathan, I guess Nathan keeps referring to this, but this has been a process for myself. Like initially, we thought we were going to, teach a psychoeducation piece. The men would vote on it and say, like, what do you want to learn? And then we would do a teaching part, and then we would do a sharing part. But because the group grew so big and the participants varied so much, it didn't even make sense to do that, because we would pick a topic and then the next group of guys that showed up the next week weren't interested in that topic, or didn't want to learn about that. So we're like, we've really scaled back the psychoeducation piece and made it more like relevant in the moment. Yeah. So maybe Nathan, you could jump in on anything that I said.
yeah, it is. I think it did. It was a real learning process to go so open-handedly into an unknown space. In fact, I think that was part of the big anxiety personally for me every week, is just not knowing what it would be like, not have any idea of what to expect. But I think what in turn happened was it actually just created more space for people to be open.
Mm,
And it wasn't this thing where maybe someone would come in and be like, "Oh, they're talking about this today. See, I can't even go to a men's group and people would be speaking my language." They're just
yeah.
talking about this thing that has nothing to do with me. And what in turn has happened now is that like that modeling piece and that the validation of real people experiencing a similar pain, and then that would be one of the most common things that I think I would hear in a group is, "Oh, I'm not alone in this." And I think there's this group isn't fancy. You know what I mean? It's not fancy. We don't have fancy psych words for what's happening in the group beyond a safe, non-judgmental space where people are bearing witness to each other's pain, active listening, and validating experiences to be like, "Oh, I can remember feeling something similar when I was going through this." And then, someone might, and that can be really powerful, as opposed to being like, in my textbook here, it says that you got about 3 more months of grief, or whatever, right? They really don't want to hear that. But when it is someone that is able to model what that experience is like, talk about how similar or honestly even dissimilar their experience was to the person experiencing something in the same topic, and then talking about how they're doing now. that can be quite hopeful, I think, for guys in that immediate space of discomfort.
I think that's what's really cool. And both of you have emphasized this now. Perhaps it's not so much always about the content or the knowledge you're trying to impart. It's that safe space that you're creating so that people can come and shed what is uncomfortable for them that particular week or that past month. And that to me sounds like the true value of this group is that people know that there is a safe space. And you guys have created this culture that is welcoming. That to your point, Nathan, it's not fancy, people aren't coming for the barista that's in the corner making, specialty coffees for everyone. No, they're coming because they want the safe space and a place where they can just be themselves, talk if they want to talk and know that it's okay not to talk if they don't want to. I wanted to bring it back a little bit more to the men's piece. So like the culture of having this men's group and perhaps even nitpicking it a little bit. Just you guys have been doing this for so long. I'm curious, like any behaviors or patterns or when it comes to men's mental health, anything that you've noticed as a bit of a pattern or recurring theme throughout the years?
Yeah, I guess probably themes that what might come up would be coping with relationship breakdown, managing and coping with anger, stress, and anxiety, addiction, grief and loss. Those would be the common things that would come up. It's hard to speak about this because it's like I feel like I'm in Edmonton and it's been 12 years. It's not this is I can only give anecdotal experience
Sure.
about what the group is. And so maybe something that I would observe is, some folks might suggest that the unusual part is to be in a space where they can speak openly. And that might be actually the only time that they're able to do that is in that space. Which again, I think from my personal background and my life, that's really surprising to me. And so hearing that there is an opportunity to share something that one might not have shared before, so that would be beyond relationships with family and close
Mm.
friends and even partners. And so I think that might be the thing where it's like something about this group is letting this person know that this is actually okay to say that thing that that someone might have been holding on to.
We do have now more, like a little bit better data in terms of people filling out an intake form, which we never had before. So I'm sure someone could pull the stats on like what people identify as like the concern, why they, came to the group in the first place.
Yeah.
But I always think like what gets someone through the door and then what keeps them there, right? And so the group isn't for everyone. There's a lot of people that check out the group and it's not for them. They're looking for more of the information, the psychoeducation. They're looking for something else. But this group, obviously meets a need. And so for the people that benefit from the group, like Nathan was saying, it's like, some of these guys, they're criticized by the people they love for not being able to talk about their feelings or not being able to connect emotionally. And it's like, well, first you actually need to know what you're feeling to then be able to communicate it. So how do you do that if your whole life you've been focused on outside of yourself and not looking on the inside and not feeling what's happening on the inside? Right. So I think the group space is great for guys to be able to sit with whatever is going on for them while someone else is talking about something that maybe they have some familiarity with. And then they get a chance to speak when it's their turn and try to articulate some of what's been going on for them, and then get to listen again and sit back and not be really in the hot seat, which I think for a lot of guys going to therapy, one-on-one therapy, it's really intense and overwhelming because it's like the whole focus is on them for the whole hour. This group, you can hang out, you can ride along and listen to other people and benefit from that without even saying anything out loud first for quite some time if you want.
And again, it goes back to that culture, right? Like just feeling free to be yourself. How often or how frequent is it that someone comes in for the first time and just starts to unload and shed what they need to shed?
Oh yeah, I could speak, but I don't want to dominate this, Nathan. So feel free to jump in But I think, a lot of guys, at least back when we started, it was a crisis that was getting them through the door. So divorce, a separation, a loss of job, a death or something that was like, really difficult, and they were reaching out in a way that possibly they had never done before. I think more recently that has changed. Like, people are getting referrals from their individual therapists or from a psychiatrist or from another like mental health person that is saying, hey, go check out this group. And they're already kind of resourced in a way that was different than a lot of the guys that we initially saw. So when someone's in a crisis, do they sit down and open up and just, spill everything out, or do they close down and not say anything? That really varies from person to person. And we, again, want to meet people where they're at, make space for, however they cope, and provide them with an experience that might be helpful too. So, and that goes beyond, the 2 hours of the group. And I think, Nathan, you could probably speak to that too. Like, this, as this group has evolved, it is not just what did I say in the group, right? It's what did I hear? What connections did I make? What other people did I meet that night?
Yeah, no, exactly. I don't know how much more to add to that other than that. Yeah, that they're what can happen now is that someone that's experienced something similar might be able to really articulate that experience in a way where it's like, oh, I didn't know that's exactly what I was feeling, but the way that that person says is really similar. It's like
Yes.
and so that again, that modeling piece comes in to be quite handy.
So when it comes to the modeling, and I'm going to refer to them as sort of those soft skills, like the active listening and the empathy and rephrasing, what did you hear? And you're going to rephrase that back to somebody. Is that something that you guys have noticed in your group that pertains more so to like men's mental health, like when it comes to that relationship building and perhaps is this sometimes for a lack of a better word, like not having those soft skills developed? Is that like more of a gender stereotype, or do you actually notice that there are like again, maybe it's a cultural piece, how someone has grown up with under the label of being a boy and then being a man. Like, is that something that a lot of people take away from it? And is that sort of again, sort of that pattern that I alluded to earlier that you've noticed, like, yeah, a lot of men need to be reminded of those soft skills.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's needing to be reminded of soft skills, but just it's almost like an invitation to learn about alternative ways of connecting. Maybe I could say it that way. There is a way that a lot of the folks that come in are coping with, and it might not be the best or ideal, but it is a cope, like
Hmm.
it is a way that they're functioning in the world. And the group, I think, offers an alternative dynamic that could include something like, I think part of again, part of the magic or the success of the group is I think we started to get really good at articulating in our first. Dave and I have this as the first 10 minutes to talk about what the group is.
Mm.
That a lot of guys are like, can this be faster if they've been with the group a long time? Because we say the same thing every week. But I think I think that's been the strength is like gotten good at explaining what the group is and articulating what it could be to be engaged in the group, which is nodding your head when someone's talking and maintaining eye contact, or what could active listening look like in a room, or again, just the freedom and openness to not share and just stay back and observe. Again, I think a lot of our answers come back to like decreasing barriers, opening up the space even more as and then what happens is like our veteran models. Maybe I don't know. This
Yeah,
is
yeah.
yeah.
Well, but I actually have like a bit of an aversion to the like soft skills. Like, I don't know if these are soft. Like, these are relational skills. And what's been amazing with the group is that we don't necessarily need to teach these explicitly like we would teach someone a new skill. These skills can actually be learned by modeling, by observing, by hanging around other people. And so sometimes someone comes in the group and they're actually, like Nathan was saying, a bit disruptive. Like, ooh, like this is going to be a hard place for this person to hang out, or for other people to hang out with this person. But after like 3 4 times, they've shifted a bit. The group has shifted a bit, and it's like nobody told them, hey, don't talk so much because other people need a chance to talk. Like, there's the odd time where we facilitate things and we'll like directly address something, but so much of the soft skills or relational skills that we see develop come by really organically. So it's like if someone would have grown up with that kind of an environment, they likely would have just picked up on this stuff. There are some people where that is not true for, but and I just want to like even highlight how, like Nathan said, it's not fancy. Like we are basic in a lot of ways in terms of like from a psychological perspective, because we didn't know who was attending the group. We started with a check-in because it was like this, who's who in the zoo, like what are we actually dealing with here? Like what kind of people are here tonight? We have no clue. And before we start sharing and start going back and forth, it was a way to kind of gauge the group. And this would happen even before the group started. We'd be meeting people and greeting them at the door. But that check-in, that initial check-in, we tell everyone they can pass. They don't have to say anything, but everyone gets a chance. So we go around in the circle. So if there's 25 guys, everyone has a chance to speak before any back and forth happens. And just that in and of itself might be hard for some people, right? They want to jump in, they want to and so we're not teaching that, but we're actually kind of facilitating an experience where people are required to then regulate themselves so that someone else can have the floor and not interrupt them. And for some people that's easy, but for some people that's like a new thing.
So as an example then, will you jump in as a facilitator? Like let's say someone is like just itching to talk and at like another person is speaking, they're taking like just a gap to take a breath before continuing with their sentence. And this other individual jumps in where there's that gap. Will you as a facilitator say, hey, you know what? I don't think so-and-so is finished yet. Can you allow him to finish?
What do you do, Nathan?
Yeah. I think that's again the nice thing about having outlining what the structure is, especially when we have such huge groups. The check-in is the check-in and it goes in a circle. So it's just like kind of nice. It is an opportunity just to be like, yeah, this is we're gonna continue with the check-in. And again, I think it's something that I would bring up in the intro is that like even if that's feeling, that's great. And that might be a good opportunity at break or after to connect with someone. But a lot of times we're hoping to move the group forward. Like I think yeah, that's why it is so different than than doing like a typical process group where the interactions are happening as a part of the therapy. This really is just a sharing space.
How long is your group in the evenings? Because I'm just thinking, when I've run groups in the past, like 25 people, if it was 25 and like everybody got 5 minutes, like that's like your evening. So how long are the groups in the evenings that you guys run?
2 hours. So 6:30 to 8:30 with a break in between, about a 10-minute break in between. Yeah.
Okay.
But I think at this stage, the group starts outside, for the first half hour while guys are arriving, right? And they're connecting and then they, sit down. And it's funny because sometimes I'll walk in the room. I don't know if Nathan and I alternate, so we don't work the same nights anymore.
Oh,
so
okay.
Yeah, but I'll like walk in the room and all of a sudden it gets really quiet, right? And if someone is talking, another guy is like hitting him, going, not like, bumping him and saying, hey, like quiet, we're starting. And it's like, again, I didn't make this a rule. This isn't like put up on the wall as like we start at this time but there's like a culture of respect, a culture of, these things have like fallen into place. So sometimes I'll have to say, okay, gentlemen, we're getting started. And then they need a little reminder. But you were asking about like what happens if someone does something like, does the facilitator jump in? We absolutely need to kind of maintain the safety of the group. That's probably the top priority. Everything else kind of has some flexibility. And I think each facilitator is a bit different, but it's really cool to see participants do it. So they'll remind someone about something about the group, right?
Yeah.
Or they'll even in their check-in be like, for new folks, it takes a lot of courage to come in here for the first time. And I remember when I was first here and like, give it some time, come back a couple of times to see if this is a good fit for you. Like all things that, as a facilitator, I'd like to say, but I think it's way more powerful that if it's coming from another guy who's been at the group for a while.
It's really cool because for those who keep coming, as you were talking about that, Dave, like it reminds me of just it's a social group in a sense. Like it's a place to come for a couple of hours a week, hang out, be in a safe space, meet some other people as well, right? And just continue to have this sort of routine to keep going. You guys were talking about the relational skills, the respect of being in that group, modeling, and I'm just wondering the value of the group outside of the group itself. Have you heard of people coming back and saying, like, I was able to use this outside of the group? Because it's something to be used inside the group, within the group, and have that culture built in and know that for those 2 hours during the week, I've got this safe space to go. But have people been able to carry it beyond the group? So the additional value outside in their lives.
Yeah, I think that is something that when the skill set that kind of observed skill set or that active skill that is being learned here is cross training for the world outside. And I do think that's kind of the exciting part is when whether that's having an internal boundary around in a relational situation that's difficult, knowing that they can like an individual can like find a way to change the way that they would respond in a situation. The group becomes this space where people are testing what they're learning in group, and then the group kind of can react and kind of care and correct sometimes. And then yeah, where are those skills effective? I wish there was an alternative word to use to safe place because I think it's been like politicized. But if the kind of emotional safety is in other relationships outside a group, then I think people can take more of the risks that they would in group in those spaces. So for some that might not be available, but I think for others there is opportunities to be like, oh, maybe I called a friend when I was feeling overwhelmed. And that again, like I know this is not sounding fancy, but that might have been the intervention to connect with someone when feeling overwhelmed was a thing that never had been happening before that moment. And so I think this is why this group for me is really exciting is because some of these like skills or interventions are connection and relationship and vulnerability.
Yeah, there's like a ton of things that just ran through my head when you were talking, Nathan. Like, I think loneliness is killing men. Like, I think if I want to get on that soapbox a little bit, and so just feeling connected to another human being, whether it's a man or a woman or, a child, like it's just, but connected in a way that someone really knows you, right? So
Yeah.
these check-ins, these shares that people are doing, they can be really deep. They can be really vulnerable. They don't have to be, right? It could be like, had a good week, work's going good, and I'm happy to be here. But they could be like, just had the worst week of my life. This happened, and people can't even get the words out. They stop. Actually, some of the feedback we've heard from guys, it's like, I've never been able to talk and not be interrupted, like not have someone else speak when I wasn't done. Right. And so to just hold that space, and again, that's a super minor thing, but we have few rules, but one of them is like no advice giving unless it's asked for. So even that concept, right? When you think about applying that outside of the group, like there's no point coming to a group and then not applying it outside of your life, right? Like that would be a waste of time. The whole idea is that this is transferable skills.
Like as you guys were both talking about this, also so many thoughts ran through my head about this idea of connection and not advice giving. Because even as a parent, or even in our profession, sometimes people come in and they're like, give me advice, tell me what to do. That's the first thing they want. And a lot of the time as therapists, we're thinking, well, I'm not just going to give you advice. Like we got to process this. We have to understand all of this. And so it's like changing the narrative of what it is to ask for help even. Sometimes, yes, we may want advice, but other times people just want to be heard. And it's not just about advice giving. The other piece too, connection. When you guys were talking about connection, it just went back through like our last several episodes, how many times we've talked about the importance of connecting, like people truly connecting with one another, whether it's a parent and child being able to connect rather than having an argument and conflict, bonding, building bridges, the idea of mentalization, right? Understanding others and how others perceive us. That is another connection. The idea of having to encourage connection rather than disconnection. And so, like, for a lot of men, it makes me then wonder, as you guys are talking about this, the loneliness, the disconnect. Are you guys seeing a lot of this as people talk about certain things in your group? And I'm not asking for specifics here, but as at least again as a general pattern, is there a lot of disconnect, a lot of bridges that are not being connected from one side to the other for people?
Yeah, and again, I'm trying to formulate a thought without it being such a generalization that is not helpful. But maybe we could talk about an example of a person that works really hard to pay the bills and to support the family activities, and maybe that person isn't is as they work harder and harder isn't connecting with the reason why they're working so hard, and then all of a sudden it comes to a point where, oh, the family does this thing over there and I just make sure that I can pay that bill. That might be something along those lines that might come up as like a cultural piece that some men would speak to. Again, that's not for everyone, but that might be a thing where is having a clear sense of duty and identity being primarily work, and then having to figure out what is life and what is identity outside of this primary role. Again, I think that's what's really fun about the group is that it can be different age demographics and people discussing the same kind of idea and really connecting on that. What does identity become when, when at the end of the day, or when you're home alone and looking in a mirror, who are we then?
Yeah, I'll jump on that, the identity piece, right? I don't think a lot of guys show up thinking like, oh, I want to focus on my identity or learn more about who I am. But regularly this comes up over and over again, right? As they're sitting down, as they're feeling their feelings, thinking their thoughts, Andrew, you were saying connection. It's connection with yourself and connection with others, right? So being able to notice like, oh, I am someone who struggles with this, or I am someone who really likes this, or I'm someone who doesn't even know who I am because I've been so focused on, like Nathan's saying, paying the bills and going to work. And now I'm getting a divorce and I'm half the time I don't even have my family or my kids around. Who am I? What am I going to do with that? And the beauty of the group is they can look across the room and see someone who's 2 years into their divorce and know that it's possible to like reinvent yourself, to cope with this huge life change, this pain that you're going through. Like it is possible to do it and you're not alone. So again, there's like all these little nuggets of things that can happen. Not everyone's going to relate to other people all the time, right? And we make space for that too. It's like you might not connect with everyone. That's not, realistic. You might not even like everyone in the group, and that's not, an expectation. But the fact that you could make real connections, like a lot of guys will compare this to going out to the bar with their buddies, right? And having drinks versus coming to the group and sitting down and being sober and, really talking about things that really matter to them, not superficial things. And they're like, I don't have another place in my life where this happens. This is unique.
I think one of the things I've noticed working with men individually that sometimes maybe a misconception about men is that, we sometimes might read things or just anecdotally hear things like, oh, men, they're very simple. They don't reflect about things. Like they just do as they're told or just go like pay the bills, Nate, like you said. But the men that have come into my office, and maybe this is what has drawn them to therapy, is like they do reflect more than people think. Right. And sometimes I think when they come into therapy or perhaps into a group, it's like that sort of extra nudge that just helps them understand themselves a little bit more or helps them understand what their relationships are about a little bit more. And so like, I've had a slew of like late 30, 40-year-old men and they talk about this midlife crisis thing, right? I don't know if it's a crisis per se. It's more like they're trying to figure things out. Like they're sort of in that middle stage, they've finished school for a while now. They've been in their careers for the last 10 to 20 years. And it's like, now I'm reflecting, do I want to be doing this for the next 20 years? Like this is a long time. Right. So they are reflecting, but not in the general sense that we may think, they may be quietly doing it, but they're just not outwardly spoken to, about everything to everyone, to share everything like that with everyone.
That's awesome. Like, just picture that reflection out loud with a whole bunch of other people
Yeah.
reflecting, right? And how you don't have to do it completely on your own. That's been one of the key kind of like philosophies is like life's hard and you don't have to do it on your own. But for a lot of men asking for help or looking like this hyper masculinity or independence in like that is promoted and reinforced and rewarded in society for, and there's a big movement right now where that's happening. So I almost feel like the group is a bit of a counter movement to this big movement of get stronger, be better, make more money, get bigger muscles. Like this is about like sitting down and actually taking stock of what's going on in your life and realizing that other people are struggling too. And we can support each other, even just by sharing your story. Being vulnerable has an impact on people listening. And you might not know that right away, but sometimes we have guys coming back to the group and they're like, oh, you shared this 3 weeks ago and that really like stuck with me. And now I did this and this has changed my life. So just thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And I'm like, that's really cool. Right. Like that is super cool. And I'm actually sanitizing a lot of the language. Like there's a uniqueness to the men's group too, that like you said, some guys are drawn to therapy and that's a certain kind of maybe man. A lot of the men initially, at least, were not drawn to therapy. They weren't looking for therapy. They were forced into or required to or told that they had to, or a crisis happened and they just all their other resources were not there and they were willing to try something new. And I think that's a really cool population to like connect with.
And I think maybe what I would have been naive to early on, or maybe early on in my career, is how vulnerable it might be to share some of those internal reflections if that's never been done. And
Yeah.
so honor the courage that it takes to even say that in either in individual session or in group.
And I think that brings it back to what Dave had mentioned earlier, like sometimes that hyper masculinity. For me, like again, this has come up with multiple individuals, but they might say that like it takes them a long time to get to this too. Like they haven't been intimate with their partner for months, if not years. But like you can tell the hesitation of that. Like, what does that say about me as a person, as a man, if I have not been intimate with my partner for this long? But that is always like the biggest hesitation, I think, in working with men, at least individually in my office, that really speaks to that idea of the importance of masculinity. I just brought that up just because.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Like that is exactly. And as facilitators, we hang out after the group and we kind of debrief. And so we talk about these things on a regular basis, right? And so what one person shares can open the door up for other people to start to share that same thing. So if, like you said, one guy says, I haven't been intimate, again, it's probably not going to say it like that, right? But and I'm struggling with this bothers me, or like with the anyways, I wish I could kind of give you a better idea of like there's a flavor to the group that might not be your therapeutic language, but it's like they're trying to get the words out about things that are really bothering them. And then someone else can say, I also feel like that, or I've struggled with that. And I think the diversity of the group is also really important to highlight. Like we have all ages, like we have 18-year-olds to 80-some-year-olds. We have
Wow.
various cultures. We have heterosexual, homosexual. We have like very diverse group. And it does vary, week to week and month to month and year to year. It changes. But it's really cool to see people that would probably never strike up a conversation with each other then learn something about someone else and hold space and be listening and actively kind of supporting someone. Different cultures, different ethnicities, different there's like So I think like the world would be a better place if we had these kind of sharing spaces where we really connected with people and understood kind of a little bit more about ourselves and a little bit more about the other people. And I'll say one more thing, because I mean, I could keep talking about this forever. We've had father-son combinations come in, right?
That's
Where
cool.
one of them had attended the group and said like, oh, I want to bring my dad, or I want to bring my son, or coworkers, right? And sometimes people want anonymity, like you said, and they don't want other people to know that they're attending, and that makes it safer for them and more comfortable for them. But other times people are like, oh my God, come with me to this thing. It's really kind of weird, but like kind of cool. And you might benefit from it. So just come with me and see what you think about it. And it's like, wow, that is awesome.
That is really cool. The fact that a father would suggest it to a son, like that really shows the value and the power of that.
And again, they can do this at home, right? Like a lot of these guys, when COVID hit and we had to shut down and we hadn't done anything online before, these guys were getting together on Zoom and connecting. But we were like, well, are they even going to come back after? Like, why would they come to a facilitated, structured kind of group when they can do it on their own? And a lot of the guys said there's something about this atmosphere, this helps more. And like
Yeah.
they're going to create their own spaces outside of it. And we hope they do. But there's also some real value in attending a group like that, that I think it is the safety. I think it is the leadership that it sometimes gets missed when we're just all hanging out.
I'm gonna go back to what you said there too, Dave. Like in the world that we live in today, like you guys are doing something that bridges, like you said, culture, sexual identity, ethnic identity, all of that, generational gaps, and if the world had more of these groups, we would come to a better understanding of each other instead of constantly, seeing messages of division. Right. So you guys have to do like a Canada-wide tour and just like start groups all over the place, please.
Oh man. Yeah, I've been talking too much, Nathan. Jump in.
No, I was just thinking about how, yeah, if we start from the place that of this idea that people may be desperate to connect and not knowing how, this facilitated group, what it offers is an opportunity of clear social structure for like 2 hours, where, right, like no, please don't interrupt, no crosstalk, like don't give advice unless it's asked for, and talking about something that's a very human experience, coping with frustration and stress, anxiety, depression, trauma, anxiety, like grief and loss. Those go beyond cultural and political boundaries, and it goes to a really human experience, which I think is the thing that becomes really exciting, is all of a sudden this person across from me that I would never talk to in real life is someone that I now knows more about me than so and so and so and so, because of this ability to be vulnerable in this space. Because then it doesn't become this like avatar online that has a differing opinion. It becomes this person that it's like has the exact same concerns, is acting about it in a very opposite way.
Yeah, no, you guys are breaking down barriers and connecting people. I think that's such highly valued in like at least in our world, in my world, just helping people understand each other, breaking stereotypes, right? And that's another value of this group that I'm hearing for the first time. So that's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I have so many vivid examples in my mind of like we can talk about it like that, we can conceptualize it like that, but then like on the ground, it's like you're sitting beside someone and you've had small talk before the group started and you connected a little bit, or you've actually seen them around. They've attended the group for months and you're familiar with them and you've connected. And then, 5 months in, they're sharing their check-in and they mention my husband. And then you see the wheels turn and it's like, oh, like I've really connected with this guy who has a husband or who's gay. And is that comfortable for me? Is that like, that is the way we challenge these stereotypes, right? I think having real connections with people rather than having labels for them and ideas about who people are. So there's a way to challenge our biases, challenge our preconceptions that can happen in this group, because again, you get to sit back, you get to hang out, you get to listen without being on stage, and possibly be challenging yourself in new ways too.
Yeah. So again, I go back to really commending you guys for running this group for so many years in Edmonton, multiple groups too, if I heard correctly earlier. So like this is amazing stuff, and that's really my takeaway today. Like we need more of this. We need more of this, and we need people to persist and stay motivated, even if at the beginning you only get five or even three or one person come out, to not give up, because word will spread. If you run a good group, word will spread and people will come, and people will benefit from it.
Yeah, I think I hope people vote with their feet, like and I think that's something that I think that I'm proud of, that is that there's a culture that has been developed that is carried by members, and also talking about how this isn't the be all and end all of groups. It's not for everyone. We start there because this doesn't have, there's no, there's, it's so low barrier that it's like, you could stay, you could go. You could, if you're looking for something else, we might be able to help you with that too. Like, I'm really proud that we haven't become this group where it's like, this group is the group that everyone has to go to. It's really not that. It's like, find what works. Like, if tonight works, that's great. Come back. If it doesn't, maybe come back one more time. And then ask someone who looks like they're experienced in the process of like what other resources that they would find. I think just holding. I think that that's kind of what the flexibility has done in the culture, is it's opened it up for people to feel maybe a bit more comfortable to explore other options as well. Like, we think we have a group that does something, but it doesn't do everything. And there's definitely lots of other supports that are super important and can meet people in a better space. And so I think I'm really proud of that, because that just shows that we're really in it to support people to find the right space.
Awesome. And Dave, for you?
Oh man, again, we could have part two. I could keep going with this. Yeah, I'll echo what Nathan's saying, is that, it's not for everyone. We are definitely focused on the things that that draw us to keep doing this work, right? So if those parts fit for you, then the group like this might fit for you or someone you know. But you brought up like the success of the group, and every time you say that, Andrew, I'm a bit like, my stomach drops a little bit, because I wish we had more research. I wish this was like kind of more documented. All of these like anecdotal things that we see on a regular basis, we don't research the group. So it's hard to convey the value of the group at times. And given our current political climate and things like that, like Momentum is a nonprofit, community-based organization that is constantly writing grants and applications for bursaries and trying to find funding. And even over the years of the group, we've lost funding, found funding, and that has not been the role of the facilitators. But right now we have no funding, and so initially it was completely free. Now we're charging $10 for the participants, if you can afford that. But there's a real need for, if you do support something like this, or maybe you're listening and your company, your organization might be interested in supporting something like this, please reach out to Momentum. I think there was even someone that attended one of our things that started like a GoFundMe page. Like Nathan and the other facilitators, we all either are volunteering or working at a reduced rate. So we're doing our part to kind of keep this going. And I didn't want this to be part of this podcast, but it's coming out now just because I think a lot of people can say, yeah, that's a great idea. But then if there's no financial support for it, these things fall apart, right? And so yeah, even just personal time, like Nathan and I alternate, because my family time, my evenings are, very important to me, but I also really think this group is super important. So yeah, if you're listening and you can contribute in some way or support the group in some way or know someone who can, like, we are open to hearing that. So Yeah.
Yeah, no, thank you. Like again, from my perspective anyway, I don't care if your stomach drops, Dave. Like thank you again for for operating this group, whatever you guys can do. I just hear so much value in you guys doing this, and keep doing what you guys are doing, and we'll keep promoting it. We'll keep promoting it on this show too. So Nathan, thank you so much for being on our podcast. It was a pleasure meeting you and having this conversation with you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
We'll do this again.
Yeah, for sure. No, I think there's
Sure, yeah.
so much to talk about, even when it comes to men's mental health. So if you're enjoying the podcast, feel free to subscribe, follow, give us a thumbs up, and ask your questions, leave us comments. We always appreciate that. And until next time, take good care.
Take care, guys.